Well, do you think any of these girls that worked with Tate would have been this scammy with men had they not worked with Tate? I thought we all looked.
This is the problem. Like, you never want to blame women. It's always the guys, never the women.
I was just about to give an example. I know you're very ideologically driven on the male version. I really couldn't care less about it.
Do you agree with his statement that basically these women on their own would not have they wouldn't have made as hardly any money, and it's the only reason they made significant amount of money and got rich together is because they joined him, and because he was an expert in the field and he knew how to propagate the women in the manner that he needs to, and therefore they became rich together. Do you agree with that?
I agree with all of it except for the last part. They probably wouldn't have made as much money. They wouldn't have, well, let me be clear. They wouldn't have generated as much revenue, because I don't believe any of them kept that much money, but they wouldn't have generated as much revenue without being connected to him. But that's because he was a master scam artist, right? Him and Tristan detailed on multiple shows how they would scam men over and over and over again to get money to try to meet these girls or meet them and scam them out of more money, and that's what they would do.
The problem is, Destiny, when you say master scam artist, basically what you're referring to is the exploitation of men, and the issue, because what you're actually referring to is that basically a man would get hooked by a woman, and then he'd be sending considerable amount of money to the woman with the hopes that maybe he could have a relationship. Guess what? That's the entire sex industry, and I agree, they all exploit men.
No, it's not even close. If you have an OnlyFans girl and you send her money to unlock a video or whatever, that's you sending her money to unlock a video. That's extremely different than a girl saying like, "Oh, I'm going to meet you. I'm on my way to the embassy. Like, just send me 1,000 more, and I can get to that." Like, one of these is very now. You might be of the mind, and it sounds like you are, which is fine, by the way, that all like sex work is some type of exploitation, which is fine. But if you're going to say that, there's levels of exploitation, right? Paying a girl money to unlock a video is way different than a girl promising she's going to meet you if you just send her €1,000 more.
No, but in terms of the cam business, you've got a scenario. So you're talking about a scenario when you're unlocking. So that's OnlyFans, and that's TikTok, isn't it? And with OnlyFans, that's actually what he's been charged for. He's not actually been charged for the cam business.
We're not talking about what he's been charged for. We're just talking about general impressions.
So in terms of the cam business, other cam businesses, they have the same type of process where, not all of them, obviously, because I'm not generalizing, but generally speaking, from many of the cam people who we've spoken to, they say that, the aim of the game is that where a man likes a woman and then he wants to spend time and then he spends loads of money. Now, where's the level or extent of that money? We don't know, because only these guys have spoken out about it in such a crude manner. But in terms of the rest of the businesses, we don't know the level of where they go to.
Sure. I mean, I've heard that before, but the woman generally actually meets the guy. I've been friends with some very big cameras, and I've heard them talk about these details, right? You'll get these, they call them whales, your favorite term. But you'll get these whales or oilers that will spend a whole bunch of money, but they actually do meet the woman. Now I'm not saying there probably are girls out there that are scammers that lie about ever meeting the guys. I'm sure that happens.
No, but
I would call them scammers as well. But Tristan and Andrew very specifically spoke about how they masterfully engineered scams on how to get these guys hooked, how to get them to come back, how to mislead them over and over and over again. They were very explicit about it. Not every cam girl does that.
Yeah. So I did see a video where they actually gave examples of when they met as well. So my point is this, that, when you look at this exploitation and who does it, you may know somebody who does less level of exploitation or whatever it may be, but generally the aim of the game is to get a man hooked so you can get money.
Sure, but even when you said examples of where they met as well, I remember that clip. That's where Tristan was speaking very specifically in the beginning. Sometimes the girls would finally meet, but what they realized is they could make even more money if they never met.
Do you think the women
it was the Tate clip.
Do you think that the women were taking advantage of the men in that situation?
If they're receiving a percentage or maybe a greater percentage.
That's a really hard one. The classic.
See, this is the problem. Like, you never want to blame women. It's always the guys, never the women.
I was just about to give an example. I know you're very ideologically driven on the male version. I really couldn't care less about it. That's not what I'm interested in. The example that I was going to give, and this is a really difficult question to ask, is the Indian scammers for like calling you and like the blah, blah, blah. There's always a question of like, should they be held accountable for what they're doing? And I don't know, if you're like a cog in the wheel of an entire scam business versus like the head, I don't know what the level of responsibilities are. Personally, it's a hard one for me to say. Like, are the girls themselves participating in the scamming? Yeah, it seems like it. But like, how responsible are they? Well, what percentage of the cut are they getting? Would they be doing it on their own? Are they being directed to do that by Andrew and Tristan? Like, these are all things that are going to factor into the autonomy that person has to be a scammer.
The problem with your argument is that basically you're saying they're a cog, but actually in reality, when it comes to scamming that individual person, they're basically the whole show. So it's the individual woman who's basically exploiting that specific man. So what you're trying to say is, guess what? Andrew Tate is directing, let's say, 10 women, and all them 10 women are exploiting. So therefore, he has a greater responsibility because he's partaking in 10 aspects of it. But that woman is partaking in that aspect. So from a macro level, you're right. But from a micro level, they both partaking in the scam, and they're both equal shareholders in that
If they're getting paid equally, maybe even on the micro level, but on the micro level, even on the micro level, I don't think you're correct, because didn't Andrew and Tristan talk over and over again about how they were the ones running the DMs? I think Andrew's joked multiple times about how, well, the girl's in that room and then I'm in the other room and blah 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 blah. Like, he's doing the DMs. He said that multiple times. That was one of the reasons why he said he was making more money with these girls than they ever could have, is because they'd engineered down to like a fine, perfect formula what they needed to type to guys in order to get them hooked.
No, but that's because that was their business model, wasn't it? But in reality, when you look at it, it was actually specifically the woman who was in the screen who was basically getting the man to be interested in him so that he could be exploited. And when you look at it, as we said, if it was a 50-50, from a micro level, they're both 50% responsible. If it's a scenario where it's 50-25, then let's say there is a scenario where she's receiving a greater cut, 70%, 30%, then she's exploiting much more.
Possibly. It changes a little bit, but like here's the reality, right? If you've got a guy that's at the head of a scam, and then he's recruiting people and paying them to be little scammers, and I guess, yeah, you could say they share some responsibility depending on how they were recruited. That's a really important part. But they share some of the responsibility, but most of the responsibility is always going to go to the head of that thing, of course. Like you're gonna blame like a major dealer over like random kids dealing on the street, of course.
So why does it depend on how they were recruited?
Well, because if somebody says like, hey, we're going to go and scam a whole bunch of men, you want to sign up, and you sign up, well, at that point, you're kind of like, you're part of the scam. You're along for the ride. That's kind of your fault. But if somebody says like, hey, like, I really love you. I want you to come to Romania. I want you to be with me. We're going to work together. We're going to be a team and blah, blah, blah. And then you get there and he's like, listen, I need you to work for 12 hours a day. We're going to handle your DMs for you. It's a lot different, the level of responsibility.
So the issue is, I love you, but we're going to scam a bunch of men.
Did I ever say that?
No, but that's basically what you said.
No, that's not what I said.
You said basically if they're dating and then she does it, it's a different level of responsibility. I just don't understand why.
If you're dating, yeah, of course. Like once you're married, the relationship changes significantly, right? If I found a random girl on the street and I started to get her to scam people, I was like, hey, we should scam people. The level of like autonomy that she has as a person is going to change versus like my wife, because I probably have a lot more leverage over my wife because we're married, right? Or my wife over me, right, is going to have a lot more leverage because we're married. So yeah, that's going to change. The relationship is going to change quite a bit there.
The relationship would be different, but the actual impact would not be different. And
we're not talking about impact, right?
No, because we're talking about the impact as exploitation. And then in terms of the women, when you look at the women that who are basically in this case, all of them up to now, what we know about, have all been in the sex industry before. So again, it's not a level of exploitation where you're getting some victim or from a poor country who basically didn't know about any of this, and then you're making them into it. But nearly all of them are have been in the sex industry or have been in a more severe version of the webcam industry before they ever met him.
So Tate's original claim was that most of the women, now I don't know, for the victims that have come forward, they might not have been in the sex industry.
They all been.
Yeah, but Tate's original claim was that most of the women that have worked for him weren't involved in the sex industry before. Now, whether that was bravado again, we don't know.
And you agree that doesn't matter in the sense of...
We're not talking about charging. Yeah, I'm just saying, yeah.
But
also, when you say the impact equals the exploitation, that's not true. The exploitation is going to lie in the intent, right? If I go to a shop to get my car fixed and they try to repair my brakes and they legitimately make a mistake, right? Well, I'm going to go back and I'll get, my brakes fixed again because I messed up. But that's a lot different than somebody intentionally saying like, we're going to fake this one and charge them anyway, right? Even if the impact is the same, the intent is going to matter a lot when we talk about exploitation. Because exploitation is a crime that exists in the mind. It's not just in the final outcome, I think.
I agree, intent is important, and the intent is the same. So because if you get your wife to basically exploit someone, or you get a random person to exploit someone, the intent is the same. What your argument is that the influence is different, but the intent is the same.
Well, do you think any of these girls that worked with Tate would have been this scammy with men had they not worked with Tate? I thought we all agreed earlier that they couldn't.
I believe they were. I see a lot of girls that are this scammy with men for free.
Okay, I don't know what question you're answering, so I'll answer it again.
Would they have been this scammy with men?
My question was...
So in terms of these women, yes, they would have been scammy if they had it. So, but the only difference is, if he's right, which I think we both agree, that if these women were on their own, their operation wouldn't be on the same level. So because the operation wouldn't be on the same level, maybe not so. But if the operation was on the same level, of course they would.
Do we have any evidence that any of these women had like other men running their DMs and that they were running long-term scams on any of their male clients?
Which of the women?
Any of them.
No, what do you mean? Sorry,
because the claim that I'm making for the camming business is that the girls were told by the Tates to intentionally mislead men about possibly meeting them one day. And that was a way that they collected more and more funds.
Yeah.
Are any of these women that have come forward as victims before the Andrew Tate thing, were they doing those types of behaviors?
So basically, they were all in the same business or worse. So some of them were strippers, some of them were webcam business and so on and so forth. So, but in terms of whether they were doing that, there's no evidence that they did it before or with the Tates, because none of that information, again, so even in the Tate case, there's nothing about that.
Okay. Well, if the Tates are lying, then obviously I don't agree the exploitation is there. But I mean, if they're being truthful, I mean that's a level of exploitation that I don't believe any of those women would have engaged in had they not been part of the Tates.
What do you mean by lying? Sorry, I just missed your point.
If what the Tates were saying were true, the way they ran their business, then I would say that level of exploitation is not something that they would have taken part in before. Just stripping is not the same as lying to men, saying you're going to meet them, et cetera, et cetera. But it's possible the Tates were just lying about everything. In which case, then
and I disagree. I say they would have if they were at the same level of fame.
I'm curious. Would your opinion change if they had OnlyFans accounts today? So, like, if the girls in 2023 had OnlyFans accounts?
No, because I don't consider OnlyFans exploitation.
I don't get you.
It's not the same thing as cam work. It's very similar.
Wait, what did I say was the exploitative part of the cam thing?
You said that the men coming out to try to see them.
Yes.
Okay, but you don't. Okay, but so your worldview is that you don't think that's exploitative at all.
Wait, that was not exploitative.
You don't think OnlyFans is exploitative?
I never said it's not exploitative. But if we're going to measure it's going to be completely different. If somebody in OnlyFans is saying like donate $1,000 and we can meet someday, and she's lying, she's never going to meet the guy, and she keeps soliciting donos, then I would say that's the same thing as what they were doing with the Tates.
Yeah, I understand your point, Destiny. But the thing is, in terms of this, I know we'll come back to the charges, but they're not actually being charged for webcam. They're being charged for OnlyFans and TikTok. So on that basis, your argument about human trafficking doesn't...
Well, but they might be doing that same thing on OnlyFans, right? That might have been on OnlyFans. They might have been telling them like, send me this money and then you can meet us at this area or whatever. Like they could have been running that scam on OnlyFans as well. I don't know if they were or not because I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't got no data or evidence for that. So
I've only heard him talk about his prior camming business. I don't think they've talked about the current OnlyFans stuff unless it applies to the current business as well.
So in terms of that, we don't have any information about them doing that whatsoever. No one has claimed it to be the case.
Nice.
But
you're a good debater. With what you're arguing, I can say you've been human trafficked.
Has Andrew Tate been a net positive or a net negative for society?